All right, so just a little bit of introduction. So I'm Elda Piedad, undergraduate senior pursuing a bachelor's degree in data science, Grace Hopper Scholar. So I'm very excited. That's good. And I'm so happy that you guys joined me because this is such a diverse group of people in terms of, especially in terms of degrees that you are pursuing. Some of you are computer scientists, other data scientists, maybe information technologists, mathematics. That's very rich, I think. So I'm very happy to meet you all today. The reason why I decided to organize this meeting was because unfortunately we're not going to have the same experience as other scholars. They got to go to the live conference and meet face to face and all of that. We're not going to have that. So I decided let's try and mimic this environment as much as possible via Zoom and other video conference methods. So that's the motivation behind this. Now we're going to listen to Megan. Megan is a Microsoft data scientist who has been at Microsoft for 2 years, I believe, according to the LinkedIn profile. She's currently pursuing a master's degree in data science, and she has a computer science degree, bachelor's degree also. She's an amazing person. She did a lot of volunteering, and I am so happy that she has joined us. And I guess let's listen to her now.
Perfect.
Megan.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan. I'm a data scientist at Microsoft. And just kind of very briefly, I'll go into a tiny bit of my background and then spend more time in what is data science like at Microsoft, what is my experience. And then for Grace Hopper, a little bit about what to expect and some tips to prepare. I know it'll be pretty different because it'll be virtual, but I'm sure they will still definitely be applying. All right, so like Elda said, my background is in computer science. I got my undergrad degree in May of 2018 at the University of Portland. I was a GHE scholar back in 2017. I also attended in 2016, and my university sponsored me to go the first time. Super awesome experience. You guys are in for a real treat. Even though it's online, I'm sure it'll be super great and just make the most of it, right? And then now I am a data scientist at Microsoft. I started there a couple months out of college. My first team was on mixed reality, if you're familiar with, like VR, AR, HoloLens. And I was there for a little over a year. And then my current team is called Marvel, and we focus mostly on content and premium content. So there's aspects to like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and then also like services like templates.office.com and like support.microsoft.com, like we'll run A/B experimentation on there. So kind of examples. I would say the biggest like high level in terms of data science at Microsoft is that there's kind of like two different kinds of data science teams you would find yourself on. So the first is a multidisciplinary product team where you're on one product. So this would be like my first team at Microsoft, where I was specifically focused on remote assist. And then later, if you click that remote assist link, then you can see a little video about what that is. But on that team, your entire focus is that product, and maybe like only a couple of your projects out of the year, like maybe 2, will be a little more wider in scope. So for example, on that team, I did all the customer insights work on that team with the other 2 data scientists I work with at the time. And we would work with different PMs, developers, designers, user experience researchers. I would be in customer calls. Like it was much more in depth and completely tied to the product. And I think okay, so one good example of a project where it was like a little more fun because when you work with one product, depending on what it is, and at the time I was in mixed reality, there was a lot less data for one product, right? But then when you combine data from multiple projects, right, then it's a little more fun sometimes. So one of the projects that I worked on there was predicting user churn. So there I was able to use all the mixed reality data, and that was a question that we wanted to answer, like when is a user, based on their past usage patterns, expected to drop off, so we can reach out to them beforehand, ask them some questions, how is their experience going, basically. And then also do some promotionals to see if there's an offering we can give them that would entice them to see more value in the product, have more value in the product, and continue to use like the HoloLens, for example. So that one was cool because then I got to work with other data scientists in the other mixed reality teams a little bit more. And that's kind of when I decided, okay, I think it's a great time for me, now that I kind of have seen this model, to move over to the other model. So that's the central data science team. So instead of being embedded into one product, then you're in a group of maybe 6 to a dozen data scientists, and you might be under a customer insight umbrella with another team, like my team is. So that's where your entire team is only data scientists. And we have, level 1 through principal level on that team. So it's great for collaboration, it's great for learning, and everyone specializes in something different. For example, we have someone who has their PhD in computer vision, right, and machine learning. So that's one of their specialties. We have another data scientist who is super awesome at search. So that's her specialty, right? So there's all these different ways to learn and grow. So that's why I decided to move to the central data science team, because as someone who's still early in career, about 2 years in, I wanted to be able to work with more variety. And also, in the central data science team, what you do is you work with a whole bunch of other teams. So for example, like I was saying earlier, we have our templates team. So I was running A/B experiments on templates.office.com, on the desktop versions of like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and I would be working with that team for those projects. And then, for example, Gilda and I, one of the data scientists on my team, was working with this other team to focus on search optimization for our websites. So what queries, right, these billions of queries that are landing customers to our sites, what are they searching and which ones are the most popular, right? So we built an AI over the last couple months to kind of pull in all this data, do all this processing, do some machine learning, and then be able to answer a bunch of questions that the team had, right? Like which searches would be the most popular that we're not actually ranking high for, and how do we rank higher for them? So that's kind of an example of the 2 different data science teams at Microsoft, something to kind of think about what model you might be more interested in. Some people want to go really, really deep into one product and know it super well and be the expert in that product. And then other people, it's good to just have more variety, but you don't necessarily get that depth per product. Like you're not in all customer calls for that product, and you're not reading every user research journal that comes out that your team does about that product, because you're probably working with at least 2 to 5 different projects at a time. So definitely a little bit of a different dynamic there. And we'll come back to questions around what work is at Microsoft for data science after, I guess. So, oh yes, I forgot I added this slide. So something that I thought would be practical just to have is, if you are interested in data science at Microsoft and you are applying, and or you would like, when Microsoft recruiters see your email because you submitted your resume to the resume database for Grace Hopper, then some tools to have on your resume. And if you don't have them, totally fine. I would say like it would be great if you had the time to maybe do a small project using one of them, and then you could cite that project in like 1 line with those tools, or however you format your resume. But definitely SQL, Scope, if you have used Scope, most people probably haven't unless you've had a Microsoft internship or some sort of connection in the past. But basically it's just SQL and C#. So if you haven't used Scope, SQL and C# is like pretty much the same thing. And then Kusto Data, Azure Data Explorer, that's something that's widely used. Power BI, Visual Studio. Those are the core Microsoft tools that every data scientist at Microsoft uses. We use a multitude of other tools too, but this is like the core set that will be shared across lots of teams at Microsoft and like all data science teams at Microsoft pretty much. But then there's many other tools that are like optional. It's just you can use them if you want to, or you could start using them if you're curious about it, which is really cool. And I appreciate that about Microsoft is because, for example, someone on my team was like, oh, we really want to use this new driverless AI experience because it'll allow us to iterate more quickly and build models faster and look at feature correlations better. So he just like kind of pitched this, right? And then we were like, oh yeah, let's get a couple licenses and let's just try it, for a year and see if we like it. And if we do, we'll keep it. And in my last team, something similar happened with another software called Jump, JMP. And we did the same thing. Someone said, oh, I used that before. It was great. Let's get licenses for that, right? It's a great tool for manipulating data and analyzing data quickly. So we got that tool for a year. So it kind of like, it's very flexible and not all teams will use the same tools except for that list. So this deck will also be shared later. I'll share it with Elda and she can share it with the group. So general data science tools, of course, you want to mention, how you can either discover a problem or, understand a problem and then also the context behind it and really focus that around like what is the user experience and like the people behind like the high level of why you would be applying any data science techniques at all. And then of course you want to be making and validating hypotheses all the time when you're doing analyses, when you're doing projects, when you're talking to the other teams you're working with, because you will always be working with other teams and other people. And then, of course, I would recommend these two top general data science tools, Python and R. Python with Jupyter Notebooks would be kind of a plus, but if you know Python, you can pick up a Jupyter Notebook super easily. There's other languages too, right? Like Scala, for example. That's also pretty popular, but I would say like, if we're gonna pick one up, I would choose Python or R to start with. Okay, now GHC. So what to expect? So I kind of broke this out into 4 categories. This isn't like an official GHC thing. This is just my take, right, on my experiences going to Grace Hopper twice a few years ago. So for the first thing, we have interviews at Grace Hopper. There will likely be interviews during the conference because that's what they did at the in-person version. Because and I expect this to be the same for virtual, because companies dedicate that time for the conference for their employees to invest in hiring a pool of diverse candidates. So I have a feeling that there will still be interviews during the conference virtually. I'm sure they will also figure out a way to do some sort of a virtual career fair, whether it's, different calls or something that you can click on to join for different companies or something of this sort. Because Grace Hopper has this huge career fair, and I would suggest you definitely, go and you can ask questions, you can talk to them. I'm guessing they'll probably have some way you could submit your resume at those sessions. And also, if there's 2 ways you can get interviews. You can get them ahead of Grace Hopper, and I'll go into that into the tips on the next slide. But you can also get signed up for an interview during the career fair. So definitely, if that's something that's more of a focus for you, then pay attention to that side. And those tips in preparing for the internship full-time experience at Grace Hopper, because it's a little while, but it takes a lot of time and it's definitely worth it and it's a good experience. Okay, next one I would say is networking. So definitely network with your peers. I would say go and maybe find like 2 mentors. It'll be a little interesting how this works, again, because it's virtual, because, you know, in person, you can just happen to run into someone in the line to the bathroom and just chat and be like, oh, you're an amazing person, you know, like, can we keep in touch? But online, I would expect them to have some sort of like mentor rings or socials. So at Grace Hopper, usually always there were like parties afterwards, right? Not each company, but many companies, especially the big ones, would host these different events. And they would, you know, just be for fun, but you would meet a lot of people in more of a casual situation. Maybe it's over happy hour or dinner or like kind of like a more arcade-ish setting, and meet people that way. But I think they'll probably have some sort of like, you know, social breakout room situation going on there where you'll be able to meet people. Also, like, I would expect them to have some sort of thing where you can see people who are at the conference, and then, you know, like you can create a profile and maybe meet them that way, but it's more, you would have to reach out to them. But I would say definitely do that, because most people at Grace Hopper are there for kind of, you know, like a little bit of networking and a little bit of learning at least, and love to meet people and want to meet people. So I would say reach out to people, and, you know, if they don't respond, don't worry about it. Reach out to somebody else. And then moving on to learning, there's kind of like 3 main types of learning at Grace Hopper. Outside of, you know, the other 3 areas, which is panels, presentations, and workshops. So I think these are awesome, and there'll be different tracks for you to follow. Like, one might be AI, or like even a specific version of AI. One might be IoT. One might be, I don't know, something else. But like, there's gonna be a whole bunch of different poles. There could be like cybersecurity or whatever. And then for the hackathons, then there are hackathons during GHC. There might be a couple beforehand also. But these are really great experiences to put on your resume, build your skills, and you'll also make connections, which is part of that networking piece, right? Because then you can meet new people, build something together, keep in touch, and then, yeah, it's just great to have on your resume. So some tips I have for those 4 areas. For internships and full-time, you know, definitely build your resume to like a strong point. Get multiple people to give you feedback on there, right? Just say any feedback you have, you know, be really critical. I want your feedback on my resume. And then know when you're, you know, incorporating feedback, that it is still up to you whether or not to take their changes or their suggestions, right? It's your resume, it's your preferences first. Everyone else is giving you feedback that is optional to take. Some feedback won't be good, but hopefully most of the feedback will be really good and will help your resume be cleaner, more structured, more noticeable, all those things. 2 other great things to have as links on your resume and, you know, like clean up and make look readable and nice and easy is having a GitHub and a website, right? So your GitHub will have different projects that you've worked on, and then little descriptions of it. And then your and also it's great to have Jupyter notebooks on GitHub too, because it's easier to scroll through than someone's like code base. And then for the website, well, I'll go back to that one. Because, for example, someone I was interviewing who actually we ended up hiring just a few months ago, we looked through her GitHub in the interview, and we went through one of her Jupyter notebooks, and it was great. It was clean. It was straightforward. she could show all the visualizations for how she went through the data science process. It was wonderful. She even put in the comments the questions that she was and the hypotheses that she had as she was going through it. And that's excellent. Okay, moving on to the website. The website is great for you to have to like kind of just showcase you, right? Just a little bit about you, who you are, your background, and your projects. The main thing is like, what do you have to offer them as a candidate, right? What makes you a solid candidate? I would say your GitHub and your website aren't essential. The most essential is your resume, because that will get you in the door, right? And if you don't have the other two, that's fine as well. Like, for example, when I was applying and when I was a student, I did have a GitHub, but I would have never put that on my resume because I did not take the time to go through it and get it to the state I would have wanted before showing a recruiter, right? So my resume was just a one-page resume. Well, so only have a one-page resume. I don't care if you've been in industry for 10 years, have a one-page resume. Okay, and then before Grace Hopper, you should be practicing and reviewing, right? So the material that you've learned in school, you should be practicing, you should be reviewing on a little bit more of the applied side, and then those like kind of higher level theory questions. I would say practice a couple coding challenges, and specifically for data science, I would find some data science case studies online and I would practice those. I would read them and I would practice them. Because companies will be reaching out to you probably mostly in September for coding challenges, and that could be, you know, real time where you're timed. It could be something that they're just like, do this thing and send it back to us. And then you'll also do virtual interviews. So some recruiters will reach out to you for phone interviews, and some will reach out to you for maybe like video call interviews. So you'll get a mix of technical questions. You might get like brain teaser icebreakers. I hate those, but I definitely got them as a GHC attendee, as a student before. You know, where it's like, you have 3 cups of water of this size. Anyway, so maybe do a couple of those. And then also, you know, a little bit of technical, a little behavioral, like practice those different kinds of questions. Yes, and I would recommend doing all of that before Grace Hopper, because those virtual interviews are going to determine whether you are placed in a interview for the time during the conference. And I would say many of the hires are made that way. For example, I was hired that way, where I had 2 phone interviews with Microsoft before Grace Hopper. And then at Grace Hopper, I was scheduled for a 2-hour interview, 1 hour with one person, 1 hour with the other, back to back. And then at the end of the conference on the last day, that's when they gave me my offer. So if that's the area you're most interested in, I would say here's some tips. And if you have more questions, we can definitely go into them. Okay, for networking, before Grace Hopper, you know the Grace Hopper scholars, right? You are all posting your pictures in those posts, which is super great. I would say, you know, reach out to some of them and, you know, like make some connections. It's always good to network with your peers also. And then, of course, you know, like myself, Grace Hopper Scholar alumni, like definitely reach out to us. I've been contacted by several different students, right? Looking for a mentor. Definitely go on that Facebook page, look at the mentor list, just say, hey, can we meet over video chat? And like, you can definitely do that. Ask them questions. You can go on their LinkedIn, make sure, you know, that there's someone that you would, you know, find interesting / you know, has some experience that maybe you're hoping to get. And that brings us to the 3rd bullet point under networking, is before GHC, I would highly recommend that you kind of, you know, take a moment and list out some skills and areas of knowledge that you want to develop, right? So something that you're not super confident or sure in right now, or something that you completely don't know, right? And that will help you kind of figure out who might be a good candidate to be a mentor when you're at GHC. And also for, finding alumni mentors. But that way, when you're initially talking to someone in maybe like a 10-minute slot and you hear, oh, they're doing something with natural language processing. I want to connect with them and learn more about what their experience is during NLP at X company, right? So that way you kind of have that when you're looking, and that will definitely also basically help you reach those goals faster, and then also save you time because GHC is a lot. There's a lot going on. For the learning, I would say have a plan A for your different sessions that you want to attend. Definitely look through the agendas ahead of time. Maybe figure out which tracks you're most interested in and you can tackle that list that way. Or you could look at them all and say, these are the ones that are most interesting to me. And you can use that kind of skills and areas of knowledge to develop lists to also plan that. But also have a plan B, because at Grace Hopper, it was highly likely, because there's 18, 20,000 people at that conference. There would be really long lines at the in-person one, and you might not get into your first session. Sometimes not your second session either, but I think virtually, I'm hoping they'll be able to handle a larger capacity per talk, but I'm pretty sure they will still cap it. So have a plan A and then have a plan B for the sessions you want to join, and also definitely check if you need to sign up ahead of time. I kind of think they'll do, the first X people who join are in. After that, maybe they'll have a little bit of a wait list. But definitely have a plan A and plan B for the sessions you want to attend. And if you have a lot of time, you could do a plan C, but I think you should be good with an A and a B. For hackathons, I would recommend actually doing them before rather than during the conference, because there's actually there's so much at Grace Hopper. It's a lot. It's great. It's a lot. And I would say at least for me, when I do a hackathon, I dedicate my time to during that hackathon. But then if you did that doing GHC and GHC is only a few days, then it kind of would take away from it. But if you're someone who's no, hackathons are awesome, I love them, I do all the hackathons I can, then maybe that's totally great for you. So you want to do that. That's how you want to network, right? That's how you want to spend time at Grace Hopper. Then that's awesome. But I think in general, especially if you want to focus on the other 3 areas, then I would say do hackathons before Grace Hopper, hackathons that are put on by companies, by schools, like Kaggle. So it'd be great to do that before, put them on your resume, get skills that way, make connections, and then maybe don't do the ones during, save the time for the other 3 areas. Yes, and lastly, have fun and get lots of sleep beforehand. So I guess with that, happy to answer questions.